This is Mike Jennings. Welcome to the Military Minute. For the last few weeks, we've been talking about the Doge situation and what happens whenever you get doged and how to handle not only the reality of what you have to deal with, but also your prevailing attitudes going through this. And I have to admit, I've never been in a situation where I ever really have been doged myself. Pretty much the only two jobs I've ever lost in my life was one picking strawberries when I was in junior high, and I didn't care about losing that job. And then the other one was the job I lost before it is that I started my company, which ended up giving me a buyout package when I had already decided I was going to leave. So when they announced who they were going to let go, I knew they were so picking me, and I was ready to take the package anyway. So that was kind of a happy Doge situation as it goes. But in all of this talk about doging, it reminded me of when I was growing up. And of course, where we're located here in Pennsylvania, literally right across the street is the Norfolk Southern Railroad. And back in the 70s, my father was doged. And for years, he had worked in grocery stores, and then his brothers finally convinced him to go get a great union job with, someplace. And so my dad finally caved, and he went to the railroad in 1975 and started working as a welder. Well, at that time, the railroad was Conrail. It was primarily owned by the government, similar to the way they ran the post office, and things didn't go so well at that time. By 1979, the railroad had hit really rough times and laid off tons of people around here. As a matter of fact, unemployment in this area went up to 26% after that. And at first, my dad's brothers told him, don't worry about it. In 6 months, they're going to call you back, focus on some home projects, do some hunting, all the stuff that you wanted to do. And needless to say, that didn't happen. And ultimately, my father found himself on being unemployed for 2 years. And at the time, this was during my formative years. So I remember how hard this was for him to deal with and to persevere through, and what we went through as a family during a really tough time, because we couldn't move. They couldn't sell the house, with where the interest rates were at the time, and also where the unemployment was. But moving through that process, and so as I was thinking about this in the context of what we're doing now, certainly as we're doing this show, we're nowhere near anywhere in the country what it is that we faced in this area back in the 1970s. But by the same token, thinking about this actually took me back to this book, which is Good to Great by Jim Collins. And he did an interview with Admiral Stockdale. So if you're not familiar with who Admiral James Stockdale was, he was the most senior officer in the Hanoi Hilton, held as a prisoner of war from 1965 till 1973. When he got out, he ultimately became an admiral. He actually ran for vice president with Ross Perot back in 1992. But certainly what he was most famous for there was the things that he had done while he was in the Hanoi Hilton. And in reading this, it reminded me of our situation here with Doge, and Doge reminded me of this. So ultimately, after he tells Collins the story about how so many people survived and made it, Collins asked him who didn't make it. And he said, well, that was easy. He said, it was the optimists. Collins says, the optimists, I don't understand, because he was completely confused based off of what he had said before. And he said, well, the optimists, they were the ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and Christmas would go. And then they'd say, we're going to be out by Easter, and Easter would come and Easter would go. And then Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again, and they died of a broken heart. Another long pause and more walking. Then he turned to me and said, this is a very important lesson. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. Collins goes on to say, to this day I carry a mental image of Stockdale admonishing the optimists, we're not getting out by Christmas, deal with it. And so, as you deal with your situation, if you've been dozed and you're having to confront the brutal reality of having lost your income and finding yourself trying to find a job in maybe a place where it's going to be hard. Like if you've been dozed out of DC area, I'm expecting that that's going to be a little bit tougher place to find a position than maybe someplace else if you're coming out of government employment. So dealing with the reality of your present situation, that discipline with the faith that it's going to work out in the end, is ultimately what will carry you through the worst of those times. But for most people who are going to face that, it's mostly going to be an inside job. Most of the pressure is going to be coming from what you put on yourself, that is coming from dealing with the kick in the gut that you're dealing with from being let go, and the blow to your ego, and which is equally real. But in the end, the best thing it is that I could tell anybody in this case is to be honest about it, be true to it, to really confront it and deal with it, because all of those feelings and all of those situations are real. And then when you can put together a plan for how to move forward with it from there, you're dealing with something that is rooting it in reality. So, because as we look at what we've covered here over the past few weeks with Doge, I mean, ultimately, downsizing is the opportunity to make positive changes when you may not have done them otherwise. This change is forced on you. And so it's a good time to reevaluate the kinds of things that are important to you. The job search is still going to work the same, but all of the preparation work that you're going to do for this has to accelerate, because now you're on a timeline. And of course, the money it is that you have is the time it is that you're going to have to move forward towards finding what you want rather than what you got to take. And if you do end up having to take an interim step along the way, that's okay. I mean, just understand your interim step is a part of the plan. So, we understand that then shifting our focus to focus on trying to help somebody solve their problems, and focusing on trying to solve problems that are what you want to do, are going to be the key to recovering from this and finding the happiness that you're looking for. Because even in down economies, even though my father didn't find the work that he was looking for during that period where it was really rough, which, by the way, he did end up finding a great position. He ended up being a sales rep for Nestle for 20 years, ended up with a great retirement out of all of that, and had a great career with them. But during that time, he still found work that he enjoyed doing. And ultimately, he used those experiences to help other people at those particular times, but he ended up building a construction skill set that he used to augment his retirement. So when he finally stopped working in 2002, he was well under what many would consider retirement age, but never worked for another person ever again. So, to quote one of my former mentors, a gentleman by the name of Bill Britt, he always said that in every adversity lies the seeds of equal or greater benefit. And if we remember that, and we focus on that, and we focus our attitudes towards this, overcoming this challenge of being doged is not something that's going to be impossible. It's not something that is hopeless. No. We live in the greatest country in the world with more opportunity than any place else that you're going to find. So ultimately, it will work out. If it could work out at a time when there was 26% unemployment in this area, that is certainly way more than what it is that we're experiencing now through anything it is that Doge has going. And so just have this confidence and plan your work and work your plan. And the things it is that we teach and that we're going to continue to cover here on the Military Minute are going to help you to find the career that you want, to grow it, and to be able to have the success you're looking for. And that is exactly why we're here. So if you have any other questions about situations related to Doge or being downside, feel free to email us. You can hit us at mike@militaryminute.us. Certainly, if you are a military veteran, certainly find us on corporategray.com. Or if you're working in the government sector and looking to make a move there, we've got a number of places that are still hiring, even in the midst of all of this Doge. Even some of them in the government space are still working with us that way. And though this may sound like a little bit like a shameless plug for a book, the truth of the matter is that it's relevant to the current situation. If you want more information, you want to dig deep into something right away, grab my new book. It's called On Target and On Time: Precision Guidance for the Military to Civilian Transition. And even though it's focused on that active duty to civilian transition, everything it is that's covered in there is directly relevant to what we're talking about here in the Doge situation, and you should find very helpful. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for joining the Military Minute. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you're notified when a new episode is released. Is there a topic or conversation you want discussed here on the show? Send it to me at scott.cunningham@militaryminute.us.